Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the December 18th Diversion Authority Finance Committee meeting. Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Mayor Mahoney. Mayor Carlson. Here. Ian. Ms. Thompson.
Here.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Redlinger.
Here.
Mr. Grimberg. Mr. Pepcorn.
Here.
Mr. Capitan. Mr. Reeds. Here. Ms. Madriga. And we have a quorum.
Thank you, Don. Notation to the Finance Committee. Commissioner Jim Capitan will be the new member on the Finance Committee, joining us from the Cass County Commission, replacing Chad Peterson. So I believe that Mr. Capitan is in New York this week and wasn't able to be with us, but he will be the new member from Cass County on the Finance Committee. Next order of business is to approve the minutes of November 20, 2024, page 3 of the packet. It has been distributed.
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
And a second. I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of November 20th as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 3 is to approve the order of the agenda. Before we move into this item, I'd like to call on Mr. Chris Bakkegaard for a point that he'd like to make.
Thank you, Chair Dardis, members of Finance Committee. We have received some additional information related to item 7A. So as staff, we would request that that item be removed from the agenda for further consideration to be brought back at a future date.
Thank you, Mr. Bakkegaard. Committee members,
Move to approve with the additional removal of 7A.
I have a motion to approve the agenda with the amendment of removing 7A. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. Mrs. Thompson seconds. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 4 is the approval of the bills. We call on Susan Thompson, Finance Director, City of Fargo. It has been distributed and is on page 6 of the packet.
The bills for the month of December, which are actually through December 12th, total $7,060,087. There's a few large ones on top. The biggest one is Clay County. That was primarily the closing on one parcel. And then Cass County Joint Water is also some property-related items. Any questions on those?
Any questions, Ms. Thompson? Anyone? This is an actionable item.
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve the presentation of the bills for through December 2024 of $7,060,087.53. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. Commissioner Pipcorn seconds. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 5, the finance report. Again, we call on Susan. Page 25 of the packet. It has been distributed.
Okay, page 5 is the historic and year-to-date revenues and expenditures. I was just told to make a point. The City of Fargo sales tax that's listed on the first line, just so you know, the November payment is not reflected there, so this will be the same as was you saw last month. It will be corrected when we get that payment. It'll be 2 months worth reflected in the next month. And then if we want to look at the balance sheet, that is on the next page, 26. So both the funds, the diversion project fund and the budget fund, total assets of $283,395,680. There is liabilities of just under $300,000. So the net position in total is $283,095,804.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions on the finance report? This is an actionable item.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. I have a motion and a second to approve the finance report as presented by Ms. Thompson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 6 is the cash budget report. We call on Paul Barthol. It's a number 57 in your packet.
Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon.
Just a few highlights on this. Susan briefly explained before, the City of Fargo and Cass County sales tax are not reported this month, so on our revenue sheets, those will do appear as a zero. Also, there was a single legacy bond request that went into the state of North Dakota. As of the printing of this document, we had not received the cash yet. It's about $13 million was requested, and payment, I believe, is in transit now. So that will be updated basically, we will finalize these numbers out at the end of the year. And then especially with the legacy bonds, we'll transition that into our 2025 cash budget. The next sheet will go into the overview sheet here. A couple of things I'd like to highlight, especially you look at the milestone payments to the developer. Again, fiscal year 2024 cost is not changed. So there was a couple payments that we were anticipating by the end of the year. Those are going to be pushed into 2025. As for lands and the property mitigation, you can see all of what we were expecting came in. We've paid those out at the end of the year. I don't expect any additional payments, but we are 1% over on that one line item. However, we do have enough cash remaining in the cash budget to pay that out, and it is below our program budget. So it's just year on year, we've been underspending that account. This year, we've paid out what we thought we were going to pay, plus just a little bit more. So, but we will balance again that out into the 2025 cash budget. Finally, the debt transfers total, you can see down there, we're over budget in that. The $864,000 was the previous temporary improvement bonds, the interest rate on that. And so for the previous 3 years, our budget has been that $864,000, we were paying on those bonds 0.48% for $180 million in bonds. Unfortunately, the last time when we renewed them this year, we were at around 3.5%. And so we're going to see a significant increase in our interest that we're paying here. And so that's the delta there, is that increase in interest that we're paying on those temporary improvement bonds. Other than that, most everything else is as planned. We're finalizing out everything as much as we can and trying to roll it into the cash budget that I'll go over with you later in the meeting. The overall admin budget is again in good shape. This is through the end of November, so we'll have some December costs in here, but we should be in good shape on that way for salary, benefits, and other expenses. Any questions?
Any questions for Paul? Could you go back to slide number 1, please? For reference to those people that are online or trying to follow this, the point that Paul was making with regard to the lands and impacted property mitigation, he used a percentage of 1%. It's $648,651. So anyone that's following along. All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Paul? Thank you very much. Moving on. Item number 8, DA Board, contracting actions. Again, we call on Paul.
All right, we have a number of contracting actions in front of you today, kind of a mixture of contracts and then a number of master services agreements and master construction services agreements. The first one is under our master services and contracting agreements. Under that, there's a task order 34 for a property structure mitigation. This is a significant farmstead, actually 2 locations that are significant farmsteads with very large grain bins and an elevator, and significant other structures, house, shop, other machinery around the area too. So this one came in slightly above our estimate, but this was the first one that we have done of this size and of this type. This is not just a single family home that we've been removing previously. So we're had 3 bids on this project. This is the low bid of the 3 with Schmidt and Sons for $678,940. Are there any questions on that one?
Any questions? Let's continue on. We'll go
Okay.
through all of them, and then if anyone on the Finance
Excellent.
Committee wants to pull one out, we'll vote on it separately.
Excellent, thank you. The next one is a master services agreement. That's the overriding agreement for the technical and consultants. This is for communication consulting services, Neon Loon, Amy. This is her master services agreement. Again, $0 to it. Her previous one expires at the end of this month, at the end of this year. And so this is basically a continuation of that master services agreement through 2027. The actual scope and fee will be negotiated, will be documented in a separate task order. The next one with the Flint Group.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I have one question. In some of these master service agreements, and they're going to be negotiating, obviously for 2025, are we going to wait until our new executive director comes back on some of these or all of these? Or are our co-acting directors going to proceed and act with them?
I can take that, Paul, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Where there were work packages that were time sensitive, Robert and I, you'll see that we've both had approvals on these items in various forms. I've done some of the professional services. He's done some of the construction ones, just to try to keep things moving forward in advance of the director arriving on February 1. So I believe that we'll have a few more of these next month, but then Mr. Benson will get the rest of the work stream when he gets here.
Thank you, Michael. Please continue, Paul.
All right, with the services agreement, and this is an amendment to the existing services agreement with the Flint Group. They are providing some of the data backup for our social media and website clicks and reports that way. We have a deal with them. Actually, it's a very good deal that they're giving us this information on top of what they already mine for information. So it's a very easy process, and since they're already doing it, they're adding it on to our requests onto theirs, and so it's a very inexpensive way of managing this data. So the next one is a services agreement amendment. With the GA Group, we've had an ongoing contract with the GA Group for lobbying and coordination in North Dakota.
Oh, okay. Doing all right in here? I'm okay. All right.
And as part of that agreement actually expires at the end of December of this year and at the end of 2024. So this agreement is to extend their services through the legislative session of 2025, so 6 months at their standing rate of $24,000 for those 6 months. The next one is actually the next four I'm going to take together, because those are four master agreements for construction services. If you will recall, Mr. Peterson requested that we look for additional bidders for our property mitigation. So we went out and contacted several firms, did an RFQ for their qualifications to make sure that they were able to do this work. And these are the new master services agreement for construction services. You'll see we've got Park Construction, PWS, Linco, and then TF Powers and Company. And so the intent is, if we get them signed up through these construction services agreements, that we would include them on the bidding of the task orders, along with Schmidt & Sons, Hogue, and IBI that have been bidding on them for us previously. So we've got a lot of work to do this next year in property removals. I know a number coming due here in January, probably another 6 or 8. We had probably 6 that went through the process here in November, December timeframe, as folks are moving out before the holidays, and then we'll have a number more on the Minnesota side and the North Dakota side once we get through more of the eminent domain process and settle those out. But anticipating somewhere 20 to 30 properties that we're going to be working on this next year. So it'll be very advantageous for the authority to have these additional contractors on board.
Thank you, Paul.
So-
Any questions? Okay. These items are a actionable item and a roll call vote. We can do them all at once, or if any member of the Finance Committee wants to pull out a specific one, if you would, just include that in a motion, please.
I'll make a motion for all, to include all of them.
A motion to approve all of the board-approved contracting actions A through H.
Second.
And I have a second by Mayor Carlson. It's been moved and seconded to approve all the items of the contracting actions, items A through H. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Ms. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
yes,
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg, I believe you're on. Mr. Pepcorn.
Yes.
Mr. Reeds.
Yes.
And Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
And that is everyone.
Thank you, Don.
Mayor Mahoney as well.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 9, other business. 9A is the third draft of the 2025 cash budget. Again, we'll call on Paul. It's on page 97 of your packet.
Thank you very much. Again, continued discussion and dialogue, as I started earlier, on the cash budget. We are working to finalize everything out in 2024, make sure this is up to date and as accurate as we can get it. I'd hoped to have everything up to date by this meeting, but I think we're with the last draw from the legacy bonds. I'd like to include that in the next version so that we have our assets fully outlined at that point and our revenues at that point. So my plan is to bring you the final version in our January meeting for approval then. And but there are a few things that I'd like to highlight as we go through this version. There's been a few minor changes in this version. The first being on the milestone payments to the developer. You'll see an additional $2 million added to that cash budget. That is some of that carryover. We are still working on that to refine that, so you may see an adjustment upwards of that also in the January one, but working to get that one finalized. No changes in the Minnesota, North Dakota River Stage 37 projects. There is about a $5 million increase in the lands budget proposed for next year. This cash budget still falls within the program budget. We're getting closer to the limits of that budget, but we still have enough in that program budget to cover this cost. This additional cost is anticipated for litigation costs, especially in North Dakota. We have a number of eminent domain trials that we will actually be going to trial, probably starting in February, March, and then throughout the year. On the North Dakota side, the authority is responsible for all legal costs for the property owners. And so we have anticipating some of these eminent domain cases, we've added some additional legal funds to that, so about $5 million for that. Non-construction costs went through there, minimal change, went down about $300,000, and no major changes. There is some additional in the third-party MOUs. Again, another about $5 million. Finalizing utility costs, we've gotten at the last month's version, the last version 2, we had some estimates. We got some more finalized costs from the utilities on what they plan on spending next year, including the Oxbow relocation for that substation there. And then the final change is one I kind of highlighted before, the temporary refunding improvement bonds repayment. We had been at a rate of about $864,000 for interest payments. We're unfortunately going to be at about $6.2 million with that change in interest rate next year. So looking at the total bottom dollar, we're looking at a $421 million budget for next year, of which, keep in mind, about 234 are payments to the developer. So without the payments to the developer, our budget is actually going down from what it is this year. But with those payments, we will utilize the funding sources that we have. We are still refining, like I said, on the funding sources, the legacy bonds, and what the funding is left there. We're also then looking at the WIFIA draws and making sure that those will match the payments to the developer, because that's really only what's available. What's eligible for WIFIA is the payments to the developer. Other than that, I think we're in pretty good shape. Is a couple draws from infrastructure escrow accounts and the Buffalo Red escrow accounts. Those are monies that have been set aside, and so they're sitting there waiting for us to use. That's just basically an accounting mechanism. So as the checks come in, we do have a account to draw from. So those escrow accounts are designated. Those are part of Susan's report. And so the money that you see there is not above and beyond. It's just drawing it out of those escrow accounts. So any questions?
Commissioner Pipcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, the one question about the eminent domain cases, I'd be interested to know how many there are left that are potential? And then your anticipation is how long do you think they take? Have they taken a long time, or do you think they'd be resolved like next year, the ones that are remaining? I guess I'm curious with that one.
The timing one, yeah, Jody, are you on?
I am online. Do you want me to help?
Go right ahead, Jody. I'll give you that one.
Okay.
You've got the details.
Yeah, so just to answer your question, then we're going to in total have approximately 130 eminent domain cases between North Dakota and Minnesota. Some of those have been authorized, but the filings haven't been completed. In Minnesota, the process is significantly different than in North Dakota. So as soon as we get through a necessity hearing, we've had 2 this month already, we acquire the necessary property rights that we need. And then that is the date of taking. So for example, we had quite a few properties go through approximately April 1st. So regardless of how long it takes us to settle those cases, the value of that property on April 1st of 2024 is what we will pay. In North Dakota, it's very different, and the date of taking essentially is the trial date. We have quite a few trials scheduled out through 2025. We're still doing what we call scheduling orders, trying to get the remaining trials scheduled out. They will run through 2026. And so our goal then is to button these up by the end of 2026. There's going to be some challenges there because we do have structures that need to be removed. And with those structures are some utilities. So this will pull us out probably 2.5 years before we complete the eminent domain process. Part of that is the availability of our legal counsel. Part of that's going to be the availability of all of our experts that we need to be in the courtroom when we do that. And then part of that's the availability of the courts to accommodate that many trials. Those trials are split up between both Cass County and Richland County. At this point, the majority of the legal cases will end up in Richland County. So did that answer your question, Commissioner Pepcorn?
Yep, that's great. Thank you very much. And can I ask just one more question? And this is I'm in charge of answering dumb or asking dumb questions, but I think this shows how fortunate we were about getting low interest for this long. We've been very fortunate. My dumb question is, so the WIFIA loan is a much lower rate, isn't it? Is it possible for us to try to do something to use more of that to get the lower interest money? Is there something like that possible?
Chair Dardis, this is John
Mr.
Shockley. I can answer that question if you'd like.
Mr. Shockley, please. Continue.
No, that's actually a great question. So the WIFIA loan is actually specifically dedicated to the stormwater diversion channel. And so we can't utilize that for non-stormwater diversion channel related expenses, such as the eminent domain proceedings. And so you are correct. That is a very low interest rate. That's 2.07%. So you certainly wouldn't get that in today's marketplace. And so there was some good strategic thought about getting that low interest rate when we did.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. But this is a little scary now when I ask a question and then the voices just come in from all over the place. It's a little bit intimidating, but thank you very much. You answered both of the questions, so thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other additional questions for Paul? If not, we move on to item 9B. Again, we call on Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In front of you is a summary that we're asked to put together per the last planning committee meeting. In the planning committee, there is some discussion about the rate increases for the consultants and contractors on the project and what they have been, a historical value of them. So before you is the sheet that we put together. These include both contracts to the authority and then also contracts used by Cass County Joint and MCC JPA for the services for land acquisition. And so you'll see several different titles in there. There are percentages that are the actual percentage rates, percentage increases of all the rates. You will see rate sheet, and what that means is that as the rates were approved, there was the rate sheet itself was submitted, and so there wasn't a consistent percentage increase, but the rate sheet itself was approved. So some may have gotten a 5% increase, others may have gotten a 2% on that rate increase. But it kind of averaged out in that way. And then the other that you'll see is kind of an NA, not applicable, as they either weren't hired by the authority at that point. When we went back to 5 years, we saw several companies that had been hired on, or the other is not available. Some of these we didn't have the access to in the time that we needed to. So any questions I can answer that way. There's a lot of data here, a lot of backup for this, and we tried to pull it together as best we could since the last planning committee meeting in early December.
This item is an informational item only today. So if you want to take some time to look at that, when in visiting with Paul, there were questions about the contract end dates and then the identified percentages in the contract, because some of the contracts had them built into them, and then as well as some of the agreements are written that it's at the discretion of the executive director.
Correct.
After negotiation and discussion with them. So this, as Paul indicated, this is a very complicated piece of information, and if anybody wants to dive into it further, it would require Paul to answer his questions.
So I will make one additional comment. You do see that MSAs, and I'm going to pick on Amy since she's here. If you look at Neon Loon, her contract end date was December 31st, 2024. So that is why we brought before you an additional MSA. So, but all of those MSAs, master services agreements, has the language, has the verbiage in it of a annual increase. Some of them are capped. The majority, as the chair has stated, are at the discretion of the executive director. However, there are also language within there that provides the executive director access to the financials of those groups to verify the need or where they're at with their company's financials that way. So,
any questions? All right, thank you.
thank you.
Does any member of the Finance Committee have any non-agenda items that they'd like to bring forward at this time? Okay, staff, anything? Non-agenda item? All right, our next meeting will be January 22nd, 2025. Don, not 2024. Trying to trick me there. Oh. Anything else? Happy holidays. Again, our next meeting is January 22nd. We stand adjourned. Thank you.